right. Well, this is the last high that we're going to have in this series. And I've given you a set of challenges, things to keep aware of. And now the question is, well, gee whiz, what do I do? So I thought, well, I wrote out some things that you can do, and they're pretty much what I do. I'd like to share that with you because I want to give you some direction. You may not take this direction and pick your own. That's fine. The question is, do something. Live your ethic. Stand up for yourself. Be inner-directed. Be proactive. Be a person. Don't just go with the flow. There's a story, I don't know how true it is, that my wife and I think about occasionally, and that is if you take a frog and you put it in a pot of cold water and you put that on the stove and you just gradually keep heating it, suddenly the frog, he doesn't notice the change in temperature, and suddenly it's cooked. And it looks around and says, oh my gosh, here I am, I'm cooked now, and I didn't know it was coming. That same thing happens to us if we are not aware, proactive, speak out, inner-directed people, because we're going with the flow. My comment was, by the time the bulldozer gets in the backyard to make some change, it's too late for you to do anything. So you got to be ahead of the game. Well, anyway, that's awareness, isn't it? That's awareness. What did Jiten Rupaul say when he was talking about life forms being affected and people trying to make artificial life, if there is such a thing? He said, well, education in the long run, a dialogue with the people that are doing it in the midterm. In the short term, we see it coming. Let's get the issue on the table and start discussing it in group now. So you can't do that effectively if you're not aware, can you? So take some time out every day for your awareness, or every once a week, or whatever your scanning is. Sometimes there's always a time of the day when I'm sitting down and I'm thinking there's nothing around doing. I have my magazines right there, and I'll pick them up, and in 5 or 10 minutes that I'm sitting there, I'll proceed to scan them. And if I find an article I want to go into detail, I will. But you can keep abreast of a lot of what's going on by scanning, so you don't have to, digest totally everything until you find something that really hits home. So, and again, you're going to have this written page available on the screen. So take time out for awareness. How? We talked about these, so nothing new. By scanning your information resources, whether it's Popular Mechanics, Financial Times, Google News, whatever. I'll tell you something I do. When I go to a supermarket or a bookstore, I scan the magazine rack. The kind of magazines that are being sold is going to tell you something about what's of interest in the culture and their value system. Really. They wouldn't buy the magazines if it didn't, right? So it's kind of a quickie sociological, anthropological survey that I do on my own. I think, oh my goodness, or wow, that's interesting, So do that. I mean, you don't have to read anything except magazine covers. Go look at a large array of magazines. It'll blow your mind what's out there. And you'll wonder, who buys these things? But people do, and that tells you something about the nature of the society you're living in. Also keep an eye on what governments do, because we said in the diffusion process, tech transfer process, government plays a big role. The whole issue of personal privacy is way up in the air because of technology in our country. And if somebody hadn't blown the whistle, Snowden in this case, we wouldn't have known about it. And it's causing quite a lot of interest. And it brings out the point that, should we give up personal privacy for security and or freedom for security? Give up some freedom for security. I think it was Benjamin Franklin or somebody about that time who says, if you give up freedom for security, you'll end up with neither. So we have to think about stuff like that. So what's government doing? And what non-governmental organizations are out there, and what are they doing? Because this gives you a chance to find a network. If you're, the thing that's interesting is in the United States, we have a publication called an Encyclopedia of Associations. You can go to a library, and a lot of times it's in the reference section. And you open up, and you'll find an association for anything. There's an association for old riverboat fans. There's an association for people who like to count butterflies. I mean, because we are community and group-oriented in our makeup, we tend to do that. Because there's value in getting together with people of common interest to get something done. We learn, and we get a chance to have things go our way better if we're part of a group. I mean, look at the unions, labor unions, look at the American Association for Advancement of Retired People, AARP, look at the National Rifle Association, and we can go on with all these different associations. But they're out there, and there's these other non-governmental groups. We're a non-governmental group, and we're out helping to supply fresh water to villages in Africa or wherever. So, and there was a group called VITA outside of Washington, D.C., which is a great resource, if it's still in existence, for information on how do you do appropriate technology so you can use simple things to improve lives in more primitive societies. So find out, what's out there that you might join that's going to promote your particular point of interest. You'll learn, you'll have a group that'll give you more power. And what you want to do, of course, the most powerful thing is an idea whose time has come, and make sure that you get that idea out there. And maybe more people will like that. And that will be a force for change in itself. Well, this naturally, what I'm saying leads to point number 2, is find to become part of a network that supports your actions and get involved in that network. Now, in my case, I happen to be a guy that thinks the environment's important, that we should live in harmony with nature, and that we can do that and still, with good technological design, still have a profitable corporation, low-cost energy, whatever. So there's an organization in town here called Green Energy Ohio, and I joined that group. And it's very interdisciplinary, and it's got business people in it who are selling, making solar cells, working on wind, use of wind. And the organization actually did some of the early wind studies on the Lake Erie, where there are good wind resources. And if you had and we had a wind program where if you wanted to, we would loan you wind instruments so you could get wind velocities at different altitudes and decide whether or not for your facility, your house, your home, that a windmill for making electricity would be worth your effort. Because we have laws and regulations now that says if you make excess energy you need, electrical energy, you can sell it back to the utility. You don't need batteries. You're using the distribution and the transmission networks as your place you put excess material, and then you draw it back when you need it. That's the action side. And then in closing, the point I want to make, besides living your ethic and being directed and doing something, don't be like the frog. That is, maintain a balanced lifestyle for your own sake, for the sake of your loved ones, and for the sake of your community. Have a balanced lifestyle. Live your ethic. Keep aware. And do something if you see there's a need. And there's another thing I haven't mentioned yet that to me is important. And that is, if you know something that's good, teach it. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a classroom and students. Teaching it means you share it with your friends. You begin building a community of like-minded people because they now know something, they can do something that they couldn't and didn't know before. And that's valuable, and that's action. So if you can do that, maintain a balanced lifestyle, and help us to end up living in a world that we'll be happy to live in. As all this technology moves through and brings about cultural change, then you can say, you know, I feel pretty good about that second question. Now that we're here, what are we to do? Well, that's about all I have to say. Good luck. God bless you, and thank you for listening and sticking with me for this whole period. And, we've had, I haven't always mentioned it, but all the little assignments and tests that you've gone through in the process, there is no right answer here. Like for example, if you were taking a physics class or a chemistry class and they said, what's the melting point of calcium oxide or something like that? Well, there's only, one answer for that. It has so much, what we're dealing with has so much to do with individual values. And that's what's important, to get those values out, because always remember, respect of the other person and that true conviction only comes from a dialogue between alternatives. You have to test it. So develop your communication skills, lead a balanced life, be inner-directed, do something, and don't just sit on your fanny. And with that, goodbye.